Hey guys, it's me, Rich. You are constantly told that election integrity is already settled and that asking the question somehow makes you the problem. Today, we're going to see why two completely different stories may actually be telling the exact same story. One involves the government reviewing voter rolls. The other involves President Trump taking aim at the media for being complicit in shenanigans. At first glance, they don't appear connected. However, if you stick with me till the end of this video, you'll see that they both raise one unavoidable question that millions of Americans are now asking. Let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Look, if you're new, like, subscribe, and comment. So, for years, you've probably heard the same line repeated over and over. There's nothing to see here.
It was the cleanest election in all time.
The elections are secure. The voter rolls are accurate. The experts have spoken. The discussion is over. You're expected to nod politely, stop asking questions, and move on with your life. But what happens when the people insisting that everything is perfectly fine suddenly become furious the moment someone wants to verify it? That's where today's story starts, because last week, two completely different news stories landed almost on top of each other. Most people treated them like unrelated events. They aren't. Put them side by side, and something interesting begins to emerge. One story is about cleaning out voter rolls. The other is about trust in the media. The connection isn't obvious at first. By the time we're finished, you'll probably notice they're really asking the same question. Now, who benefits when Americans are told not to verify anything? Let's start with the voter rolls. So DHS finds 278,000 non-citizens on voter rolls. I thought the libnuts always told us that never happens. It's a conspiracy theory. The White House says that the actual number could be higher because some states did not share their voter files. I wonder which states didn't share their voter files. The Department of Homeland Security recently announced that it is reviewing voter registration records and working with states to identify registrations that may no longer be valid because of death, relocation, or other eligibility issues. President Trump responded by directing DHS to continue working with states to clean up voter rolls ahead of the upcoming midterm elections. Now, that sounds like basic record keeping. If somebody moved across the country 5 years ago, shouldn't the voter registration records reflect that? If someone passed away, shouldn't the registration eventually be removed? If someone isn't legally eligible to vote, shouldn't the records accurately show that? Those used to be common sense questions. Today, however, somehow, they are political. Now, what I do know is that in 1994, the National Voter Registration Act, the NVRA, came out. The Democrats in Congress passed it, and Bill Clinton signed it. And what it does, among many other things, is it tells all 50 secretaries of state that they have so much time, so many years they have to wait before they can purge dead people and people who moved out of the state or from one county to another. In other words, people who would never know that they just voted. So instead of hearing people say, great, let's make sure everything is accurate, many of the loudest voices immediately reacted with outrage, not concern over whether the rolls were accurate, not curiosity about what the review might uncover, just outrage that anyone dared to look. And that ought to make you stop and think, because confidence isn't usually afraid of verification. Imagine taking your car in for inspection. If you know your brakes are fine, you're probably not panicking about the mechanic looking at them. Imagine balancing your checkbook. If everything adds up, an audit simply confirms it. But imagine somebody saying our books are perfectly balanced. Also, nobody is allowed to audit them. At that point, people don't gain confidence. They start asking why. That is exactly where this debate has gone. Notice what many critics are not saying. They're not saying we've already checked and here are the results. Instead, the argument often sounds much closer to, how dare you even look? That's a fascinating position, because audits don't create problems. Let me say that again. Audits don't create problems. They reveal whether problems exist. If there isn't a problem, an audit strengthens public confidence. If there is a problem, an audit identifies it. Either way, honest voters win. So why does simply verifying voter rolls produce so much political drama? The answer may become clearer once we look at the second story. The second story seems unrelated. at least until you listen carefully to what President Trump was actually saying. He jumped onto social media and blasted what he called the fake news media. His argument wasn't simply that reporters dislike him. I mean, we've all known that for years. His point was something much larger. Despite years of overwhelmingly negative coverage, Americans still elected him. Not only did he win the Electoral College this time around, but he won the popular vote and carried the overwhelming majority of counties across the country. He also won all the bellwethers, and he won all the battleground states. Now, whether you agree with Trump's conclusion or not isn't really the issue. The interesting question is this: why do so many Americans no longer trust institutions that once enjoyed almost universal confidence? That question leads directly back to our first story, because both stories are really about trust. One asks whether Americans should trust election systems without verification. The other asks whether Americans should trust media organizations without skepticism about bias. Notice the pattern. In both cases, you're asked to simply accept the conclusion. How dare you say anything other than that? Don't ask questions. Don't verify. Trust us. Remember, it used to be trust but verify. Now it's just trust us and don't verify. Why do you got to do that? History has never been particularly kind to people who blindly trust powerful institutions. That's true whether you're talking about governments, corporations, financial markets, or news organizations. I mean, you think about it. Verification isn't an attack. Verification is how confidence is earned. That principle applies everywhere else in life. Banks get audited. Public companies get audited. Hospitals undergo inspections. Police departments have internal investigations. Schools get accreditation. Airplanes undergo maintenance checks. Nobody claims those inspections undermine confidence in their systems. In fact, they increase confidence because they demonstrate that somebody's actually checking. Yet, somehow, elections have become the one area where even asking to verify records is portrayed as dangerous. That's a strange exception, don't you think? The Constitution guarantees every state a Republican form of government. Now, a republic depends on the consent of the governed, and that consent only has meaning when citizens have confidence that elections are conducted lawfully and accurately. Protecting the integrity of elections isn't a partisan goal. Shouldn't be. It's one of the most fundamental responsibilities of any government operating under a constitutional republic. If officials are unwilling to verify the accuracy of voter rolls and election procedures, they shouldn't be surprised when public confidence begins to erode. But many on the left don't care about the public confidence. They haven't for years. Now think about that for a minute. Public confidence doesn't come from politicians insisting everything is perfect. Shut up. It comes from people seeing that safeguards actually exist. Now, that brings us to perhaps the biggest contradiction in this entire debate. For years, we've heard that voter fraud is extremely rare. Fine. Let's assume that's true. Then verifying the voter rolls shouldn't bother anyone. If there isn't a problem, the audit proves it. If there is a problem, the audit finds it, right? Either outcome benefits honest voters. Republicans benefit from accurate elections. Well, guess what? Democrats also benefit from accurate elections. Independent voters benefit from accurate elections. You see the pattern here? The only people who don't benefit are those who depend on inaccurate records remaining inaccurate. This is common sense, guys. That's why some of the reactions have been so fascinating. Instead of saying, go ahead, check everything, fine with me, the response is often like, stop looking. Why? What exactly is so frightening about confirming the records? And that's where another piece of this discussion enters the picture, because critics of election integrity often insist there has never been meaningful evidence that voter rolls have been exploited. Is that really true? Now, here's what shouldn't be controversial at all. When questions arise about voter registration records, government officials should investigate them. Not because one political party benefits, because the American people benefit. That is exactly what DHS says it is now attempting to do. Whether this review ultimately removes 1,000 registrations or hundreds of thousands really isn't the central issue. Now, I know to cheaters, it certainly is. But to honest people, that's not the issue. The point is that someone is finally looking. And somehow that alone has become controversial. Ask yourself why. If voter rolls are already clean, verification should increase public confidence. Problems exist. They should be corrected before another election takes place. Either outcome strengthens the system. Isn't that what Democrats always said they wanted? That sounds less like voter suppression and more like responsible management to me, which brings us back to Trump's comments about the media. His social media post on Truth Social wasn't simply complaining about reporters. It was setting the stage for what comes next. Trump's argument is that much of the media has already spent years trying to shape public opinion against him. Now, look, unless you've been living in a cave, you know he's right about that. So if the same outlets criticize efforts to strengthen election integrity, many of his supporters are likely to dismiss those criticisms as more of the same. Whether that's persuasive depends on your own view of the media. But politically, it's an effective strategy because if Americans ask one very simple question, who do you trust? The institutions demanding blind confidence or the people demanding verification? That's really what both of these stories are about. Trust, not blind trust, earned trust. There's an enormous difference. Nobody should fear transparency. Nobody should fear having accurate records. Nobody should fear audits. In fact, if your position is built on truth, transparency becomes your greatest ally. Sunlight doesn't weaken honest institutions, it strengthens them. The people who should welcome audits the loudest are the people who are convinced everything is already above board. That's why this debate has always felt backwards, doesn't it? The louder someone insists there is absolutely nothing to find, the more curious people naturally become when they're told nobody is allowed to look. This isn't conspiracy thinking. That's basic human nature. When someone slams a door and tells you not to open it, curiosity usually follows. Government shouldn't ask Americans to suspend common sense every election cycle. It should demonstrate that elections deserve public confidence, and confidence isn't built through slogans or television talking heads. It's not built through social media fact checks either. It's built through transparency, accountability, and verification. Those aren't Republican values, and they aren't Democratic values. They're American values. If the voter rolls are accurate, prove it. If election procedures are secure, then show us, just demonstrate it. If public confidence matters, then damn it, earn it. Because in a constitutional republic, trust should never be demanded. It should always be verified. Now, look, at the end of the day, this debate isn't really about Donald Trump or the Democratic Party. It's about whether Americans should simply accept assurances from powerful institutions or expect those institutions to verify their claims. A government confident in its election system shouldn't fear transparency. It should welcome it. Don't you think? The brighter side is that every effort to improve accuracy, accountability, and public confidence strengthens the republic for everyone, regardless of which party wins. All right, so tell me what you think about this in the comments below. I want to hear from you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
I saw the flyers on the gate, talking loud about the people while they burn